Hello and welcome to Movie Mayhem here at Suspiria Works Cinema, where we watch all the movies. Today is another random movie review of a horror franchise, Final Destination. Final Destination started out in 2000, part of the kind of resurgence of horror films and especially franchises that died off in the 90s. And it was a bit of a kind of a change, you know, at the time. It was a supernatural blend. They made 5 movies in total. I don't see there being a 6th one unless they go with a reimagining or a reboot of some kind. So it's a pretty well completed series. The first one was directed by James Wong, much more famous for being a producer. He's produced hundreds of shows. Most importantly was The X-Files. So he came from that kind of mystical background, and Final Destination was his directorial debut. He went on to do The One with Jet Li, Final Destination 3, and Dragon Ball Evolution, which ended his directing career as far as I can tell. not that it didn't deserve to end his directing career if you've seen that movie. And if you're a Dragon Ball fan and you've seen that movie, you really... At any rate, Final Destination, the first movie, is not bad at all. Its main premise is a group of kids get on a plane. One of them has a vision that they're all going to die. So he freaks out, gets off the plane, and some of the friends come with him. So the concept is that death has a grand plan. And if you cheat death, such as in this case, death will come back for you and make sure you die. And it's established in the first one that death returns and kills everybody in the order. The stars of this are Devon, Sawa, and Larter. They do fine. Todd pops up in the first one. He plays the coroner, who's kind of like a messenger of death in a way. They never quite say what he is, but it's kind of like he's Death's avatar on Earth. Todd's always cool, very ominous. Got a great voice, kind of a creepy look. So the basic premise is Death's gonna kill them all, so you get them to watch all these kids get killed off one by one. Much like a slasher film, except the idea is this is a death. You can't stop death. There is no guy in a hockey mask walking behind you. There's no way to escape. And of course, as it's shown in the movie, you can die anywhere. Great concept there. Also, the gore is pretty hardcore, and it does a nice blend of gore with suspense. Now, the level of fear that you would have in these movies is going to greatly depend on how much you buy into the supernatural. So that's kind of a sketchy thing. They establish in the first movie that if someone intervenes, death can skip you and go on to the next person. But by the end of the first movie, we realize all that does is skip, then comes back and rotates around to still get you anyway. So it's got that nice Twilight Zone-y darkness to the end of the movie. It would have worked well as a standalone. That brings us to the sequel. Final Destination did very well. That brings us to the sequel. Final Destination was a success, so of course you get a Final Destination 2. This time it was directed by David Ellis. Larter returns, AJ Cook's in it, and once again Todd. This time, however, it's a car accident that is prevented. Okay, fine. And for some reason in the second one, they thought it would be cool. It doesn't go in the order that they would have died, but the reverse order. Which would have been fine, except in 3, 4, and 5, it's the order, and it's never mentioned again why, for some reason, in the second one it went in the reverse order. It's kind of irrelevant. So it's essentially the same movie, with the exception of you meet Larter's character again, who's in a padded cell to prevent death from getting her. That's kind of cool. I like the continuity tie there is nice. They kill off Devon Sawa. in a newspaper article. I'm guessing he refused to be in it because he was so famous or something. No idea why he wasn't in it. And again, you got the same movie. The big axe at the beginning, some great gore, that's a vision, then each person gets killed off one by one by one by one. Thus, at the end of the movie, everybody's dead. Which brings us to 2006. Interestingly enough, the first one was 2000, second 2003, third 2006, and fourth 2009. Kind of a nice, surprisingly good gap between the movies, and not that 1 year, but the scripts really don't warrant it. I'm surprised these weren't yearly releases. Final Destination 3 sees the return of James Wong, who had done the one in the meantime, and you get more of the vibe again of the first one. And by vibe, I mean it's the same movie as the first one. This time, they're on a roller coaster, and that's the only difference. They still all die. Now, in 3, we've gotten to kind of more absurd ways, like death by tanning bed. Yeah. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty positive what happens in that scene could never happen. Whereas in the first one, everything was plausible. Ridiculous, but plausible. Obviously, if you're strung up by a cord, you're going to choke to death, right? But the tanning bed thing was a little silly. He establishes in this one that the people get visions of how they're going to die. Or the person who had the vision at the start can see how others are going to die. So there's that chance for saving them. Of course, it's a Final Destination movie, and that doesn't work. Now, what he did interesting, I guess, with this was adding a little bit to the mysticism, but it's the same director returning, and I'm surprised he didn't try to do anything else. It's disappointing that, he didn't add more to it. Tony Todd is not in the movie physically, but he plays the voice of the devil, which is cool. So, you still got Tony Todd around. In 2009, we get the Final Destination. This is the trend of not numbering your sequels. So, it's part 4, but this time David Ellis returns from part 2 to do part 4. Now, he ignores the reverse order thing, kind of picks up, once again, exactly the same movie. This time it starts out with a car wreck, everybody dies, blah, blah, blah. The kills are quite gruesome in some scenes, and this was more of you got a lot more heavy laden on the CGI type kills in the fourth one. It's hard to review these movies, really, because they're the exact same movie. If you enjoyed the first one, you're going to enjoy the second one, third one, fourth one, even the fifth one. They're all really the same movie. The only reason to maybe watch them all is to get some of the continuity ties with 1, 2, and 5. So, and with 4, I understood the ignoring of the end of part 2 with part 3. James Wong was directing it. Ellis, however, does 4, but the only contribution he made to the continuity was the reverse order and the idea that new life will stop the chain. And that's completely ignored in 4. 4 is just a carbon copy of 3 or 1. There are some very nice kills, and it was done in 3D. So that part makes it kind of cool and fun. Then 2 years later, in 2011, Stephen Quale makes his feature debut with Final Destination 5, the ending of the series. If you're going to watch them, I would suggest watching 1, 2, 5. That way you get all the continuity. 5 is, again, in 3D. That part's cool. There's some good acting. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the movie. It's just the same movie that you've already seen, so you know what's going to happen. This time it starts off on a bridge, and everybody's going to die. The only cool thing is the end of the movie. The very end of the movie, I have to give credit. When I watched the movie, I wasn't noticing certain things. And I'm not going to spoil this. I'm just going to throw out some things to watch for. They aren't using cell phones or computers in the fifth movie. And I didn't notice it when I watched it, which means it was actually directed quite well. It wasn't a punch-you-in-the-face note, but it was interesting. So I enjoyed 5. I enjoyed the end of 5, and I think it's definitely worth checking out if you've seen any of them. I mean, they're not that long. You could probably blow through them all in a night. We did it in 2 nights. So it's worth checking out. So that's the Final Destination series. As movies go, I'm going to rate the first one for its originality. We'll give it a 7. The second one being slightly stepped up on the gore and adding a little bit of flavor, I'm going to give a 7 as well. The third one, I mean, simply because it's just a rehash of the first one with the same director as the first one, I'm only going to give that a 5. Fourth one, again, rehash with ignoring his own continuity, so only a 5 as well. Fifth one, I'm going to knock that back up to a 7, simply because I like how he tied up the series, and the 3D is really cool. So, there you have it. As an overall series, it's fun. The Blu-rays are all varying quality. The first one is probably the weakest. It's not from a great master. So, the first one, maybe 6. Second and third go up to a 7. 4 and 5 are both newer, shot on digital. 4 is kind of dark, especially on the 3D version. So, I'm only giving it an 8. And 5 looks really good. It looks nice. Even the 3D version is not too dark, so I'll give that a 9. There's neat little extras on 4 and 5, 1, 2, and 3, kind of minimum older movies. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you get a chance to check out the movies. Like the video, share it, provide any comments, and we'll see you next time here at Movie Mayhem.